Well, hello there, you scrublords, and welcome to a video that I haven't made in a while. I haven't really touched on Naval Forces in terms of actually giving them a dedicated video in forever. Actually, I'm not sure if I ever have. If I have, it's always been in something else, or I've just thrown in some random gameplay. Actually, no, that's not true. I did cover destroyers when they first came out. And here we are at light cruisers, so in case you guys weren't aware, Gaijin tested light cruisers for the very first time last weekend. We were given two to play, the Bartolomeo Caglione and the HMS Enterprise. Both of these are light cruisers, meaning that they are essentially much bigger destroyers. They are equipped with much heavier firepower than destroyers, in this case 6-inch guns, which equates to about 152 millimeters. They also displace a much greater amount of tonnage, so they are a little bit faster in a straight line than destroyers are. However, they are significantly less maneuverable because of their size. You essentially got the chance to play three different types of ships. You could play the light cruisers, you could play the destroyers, or you could play the motor torpedo boats. There were 6 vessels in total available to play for this event. There was 1 torpedo boat, 1 destroyer, and 1 light cruiser for both factions, the two factions being Italy and Britain. Now, granted, the teams were mixed, so the only way you could tell that somebody was not on your team was if you hover your mouse over them and they don't have a name over their head. However, I digress. Honestly, the balancing between all 3 of these ships, on paper, looks really poor. One would think, why would anybody play the motor torpedo boats? But as I played through the event, and as I played game after game after game, I realized how important the motor torpedo boats were. Part of that was due to the way the map was laid out. 2 of the 3 capture points are located in motor torpedo boat territory. So you either have to bring a destroyer and go hunting these motor torpedo boats, or you have to either play a motor torpedo boat yourself, or you have to risk taking a light cruiser into shallows, or into the close quarters arena of the motor torpedo boat. And in that arena, the motor torpedo boats are devastating. They are deadly, they are fast, they are hard to hit, and it is not easy to take them down, especially if you have these big old guns on the light cruisers. Now, granted, with a little bit of practice, you could hit them, and if you did hit them, especially with an HE round, it was devastating. You would either one-shot them entirely, or you would severely cripple them. Again, like I said, the motor torpedo boats are very deadly to the much larger ships. As for the destroyers in the event, the destroyers were great because they were excellent at destroying torpedo boats. That's what they were initially designed to do. That's what that class of ship was created to do. They're designed to hunt mortar torpedo boats and protect the fleet from lighter, faster vessels. And in that respect, they worked great. They worked wonders. The Tribal class destroyer was probably, now that I think about it, the Tribal class destroyer was probably the best all-around ship for the event, because it had a lot of guns up at the front. It had 2 twin gun turrets, whereas the Italian destroyer, the Soldati, also had 2 twin gun turrets, but they only had 1 on the bow and 1 in the stern. So your main gun firepower was severely limited on the Soldati, whereas the Tribal class could bring a lot of firepower to bear in a very short period of time while presenting a very small and hard-to-hit target. I'm also finding that a lot of the more traditional naval tactics that we read about in history books do apply here, whereas I found in World of Warships a lot of those same naval tactics don't apply as well. For example, in World of Warships, showing your broadside is considered a death sentence. However, in War Thunder, showing your broadside, while it does present a much bigger target for the enemy to hit, also allows you to bring all of your firepower to bear. And bringing more firepower to the fight than your enemy can, I found to be far more important than the caliber of the gun, honestly, and the rate of fire. If you can simply bring more rounds on target, you have a much greater chance of getting a lucky hit and destroying the enemy. Now, something else I want to talk about is the balancing between aircraft and ships in this event. Aircraft definitely got the short end of the stick on this one. But it's not necessarily the cruiser's fault, it's more the game mode's fault. Basically what you could do is if you wanted to spawn in a fighter or a bomber, and you had enough spawn points, you could basically just select them and they would give you a random aircraft to go and attack ships with. The thing is about attacking naval vessels, which a vast majority of players playing in this event are playing naval vessels, is that you are one plane against how many ships full of anti-aircraft guns? As a result, aircraft played a very, very minimalist role. They were mainly annoyances than anything else for a lot of these ships. And part of that is also due to the fact that the AI control the anti-aircraft unless you choose to manually select the anti-aircraft yourself. You can set the secondaries on your ship to focus on aircraft, ships, or both, or none of the above. And I often found that because the secondaries started firing at ships that the AI could see, but I couldn't, I often just switched them to anti-aircraft only and just left them there. And they did plenty of work on their own. They shot down aircraft that I had no idea were in the air. And granted, they did have an alert that would pop up every now and then, that whenever an enemy aircraft spawned, somebody would say, enemy threat in the air, or enemy aircraft in the air. And that was really, really helpful. I'm glad they added something like that in, because one of the other big issues with ships is that you can get tunnel vision really easily. Aircraft, they could pose a great threat to ships, but the problem is that getting close enough to accurately engage, a lot of the ships dropping bombs on them, firing rockets, strafing them, and so on, requires you to get awfully close to a lot of secondary AA, and there's very little, even attacking a single light cruiser or a single destroyer means that you are facing at least 4 or 5 different anti-aircraft mounts shooting at you at once. It's the equivalent of attacking an entire base full of enemy AA, and that's just one ship. Imagine if there's 3 or 4 ships around you, then you got about 4 or 5 times that amount of anti-aircraft, all focusing on you. So as a result, aircraft didn't do much. They were mostly there as extras. And I imagine they were also to test their viability against light cruisers. And unfortunately, aircraft don't get much better against these against ships like this. The way that aircraft dealt with a lot of naval vessels, especially large ones like battlecruisers and battleships and carriers, was to launch attacks from multiple directions with multiple aircraft in each direction. This forces the anti-aircraft from a particular vessel to split. It has to focus on all of these aircraft at once around it. It lessens the chance that you are going to get hit as an aircraft because there's not as many guns firing at you. Unfortunately, because players are only consigned to one aircraft at a time, it means that fighting against a lot of these naval vessels with aircraft, especially large, heavy, four-engine bombers, for whatever reason they were giving the British bombers like the Lancaster in this event. And the Lancaster was just a giant target. Even at high altitude, it was not actually that difficult to shoot down, especially with the AI in control. Aircraft definitely got the short end of the stick on this one. Moving on here, in regards to the controls and aiming system, I felt that they were much improved over the last versions that I've seen. And then again, I don't play every single naval test that comes along. I play them only occasionally. I mean, this was the very first test of the light cruisers, so I felt that I had to take part in it. And from the last time I played Naval Forces, the aiming system has definitely improved. It's much smoother, it works better, it's not as janky as it used to be. It still needs a little bit of fine-tuning, but I'm not sure exactly how you would do that. I don't really have a solution for it. But it definitely felt better. Now, aiming with Naval Forces is very, very different from playing tanks or playing aircraft. With playing tanks and aircraft, there are definitely major differences between them, but they're not that different. Aircraft is mostly just leading, learning how to properly lead your targets with the guns that you have, the muzzle velocity, and so on. With Naval Forces, you are far more reliant on a completely different system. Basically, the way the system works is you put your crosshair on a ship, and there is some information to the top right of the T crosshair that you have, and it will say target acquired, and then you calculate the range by pressing the middle mouse button, which is the default binding, I imagine, or pressing X, or whatever button you use to lock the enemy an enemy vehicle in, say, AB or SB or whatever. By pressing this, you update the range to the target. Then you fire a salvo. You watch where the shots land, and by the way, while the fire directors will find the range for you, they will not calculate lead for you. That is all done on your own. Something that I found was actually kind of difficult to do was, at closer ranges, it was difficult to get the guns to depress low enough to engage the areas of an enemy ship that I wanted to do. So you're much better off keeping it, if you're going to closer ranges, you're much better off keeping yourself at about 3,000 to 4,000 meters than you are trying to close into point-blank range and shoot them, which I saw a lot of people doing. And granted, I think a lot of that is simply because people don't know quite how to aim yet, but also because aiming at long ranges, especially with this current system, is very, very difficult to do. Now, at this range, this is about average to medium range for a ship, and in fact, you could probably classify this as relatively close range, so it's not that difficult to land shots on this destroyer. However, when we are talking at ranges above 10,000 meters, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000 meters, it is a very, very different style of aiming than anything that we have seen so far. So in this case, let's say a ship and I are broadside to each other and we are going in opposite directions. We are parallel to one another, and we are both firing at each other at longer ranges. Something else that needs to be taken into account when you're firing at an enemy ship is the momentum that your ship is carrying. So if I want to aim at the enemy, right under the enemy's main gun turret on the bow of his ship, I need to aim ahead of the bow in order for my shots to fall back and land on his main gun turret or right below it. If you fail to do this and you aim, and let's say I aim right at the gun turret as we are passing each other at maximum speed, at flank speed, my shots will probably land either at the stern of the ship or the center of the ship, even though I'm aiming at the front gun turret. But again, it's not as intuitive as it initially sounds, and I fired a lot of salvos, just completely nowhere near where I wanted to aim because I was still adjusting to it. And if you watched my stream, you saw that a lot, where I was just firing dead center on an enemy ship, and I kept forgetting between each salvo that I've got to aim ahead. And in fact, I think you're seeing it in this footage here. Anyways, I think I've covered almost everything here. Going back and rechecking, the balancing in this event was pretty darn good. I felt that the spawning system was fun because, well, you had unlimited spawns, so you could make mistakes. And again, I don't think they were trying to punish people for making mistakes here. They were simply trying to get people to play. I felt the balancing was good. The Italians definitely had the better cruiser, in my personal opinion. But the British had definitely the better destroyer. And the PT boats were roughly matched. The Dark class motor torpedo boat was definitely more maneuverable, but it brought significantly less firepower in terms of autocannons than the Italian one did. So the sides were pretty evenly matched. You could play either or and still have plenty of fun. The ship controls felt good, but the major downside was that it's very, very different, and it's going to take some time to learn. Aircraft played little to no role in this event. In fact, they were quite ineffective overall because of all of the anti-aircraft and secondaries available to these ships, and because all the ships were concentrated so much and you were a single aircraft, it was very, very easy for the AI gunners to shoot them down without them being able to really do any sort of damage. So that was really one downside of this event. Other upsides of it, they definitely felt fun to play. That was the key thing. It was fun, and it has depth. No pun intended. My biggest problem with with previous versions of Naval Forces was the fact that the gameplay lacked a lot of depth. Here there is. I can definitely see there being some depth here. Is there as much as tanks? Probably not, but it's definitely there. They're on the brink of something good, and I think if we see more ships and more variety as time goes on, this will only improve. The last thing that I really want to touch on before I close this out is the fact that the one bad thing across the board with naval vessels that I know will only get fixed in time is the optimization. Now, if the gameplay seems a little bit stuttery at times here, it's because the optimization in this event was really piss poor. On average, I was running between 45 to 50 FPS when normally I run tanks at about 90. Now again, there's a lot of stuff going on. You can see the amount of tracers flying about in this event. And on top of that, all the water effects, and especially if you get close to a lot of the islands, I found that the FPS tended to drop a lot because the game was trying to render all the trees and stuff like that. But that was my other biggest issue with this event. The optimization still needs a lot of work, but I know that Gaijin is working on that. So overall, my thoughts are, this is definitely going in the right direction. I like it. It's fun. Even as a tank guy, somebody who wasn't like initially interested in ships, like, this has caught my interest. I encourage Gaijin to keep testing bigger, introducing more and more varieties of ships, and testing bigger. Ideally, I would at the very least want to try battleships before I write them off. I know a lot of people are saying we can't have battleships, it's going to be too slow of a gameplay. It's going to be different gameplay, not necessarily just slow. And that's an important distinction to make. The gameplay is different, not bad. Without further ado, tell me what you guys' thoughts are on the event was. Do you guys agree with my opinions? Do you not? Do you think that this event was utter crap and that Gaijin needs to redivert their resources somewhere else? Or do you think that this really has potential, like I do? Leave your comments below, and this has been Many Miles Away. Keep your tracks checked, keep your binos in place, keep around on the tube, and I will see you guys in the next video.